The Locked On Podcast Network presents the College Sports Big 3 in 30. The three biggest stories in college sports. From our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The College Sports Big 3 in 30 starts now with the biggest story in college sports. You are Locked On USC, your daily podcast on the USC Trophy.
There's no gray area, okay? If you're committed, you're committed. I talked about it before on the show. You're either all in or you're out when it comes to USC's 2026 recruiting class. Pretty black and white. Again, no gray area with the word commitment. I don't care what source you want to use to go find your definition of the word commitment. It all comes up the same. There's literally a definition. I'm going to give you two. The state or quality of being dedicated to a cause, activity, etc., or an engagement or obligation that restricts freedom of action. You've made a commitment. I don't care how many stars you have next to your name. If you're, a football recruit, a prospect, if USC is interested in you, I don't care how many stars. And for the most part, neither does USC's coaching staff. I mean, they'll use it as a reference point, but that's not the overriding factor. Doesn't matter if you're a 3-star, 4-star, 5-star. You're not bigger than the program, no matter who you are, no matter where you're from, or especially whatever position you play. It doesn't matter. So yesterday, that significant news that everyone was waiting for, it happened the following day, mid-afternoon, Wednesday. All right. Elite linebacker Xavier Griffin from Gainesville, Georgia, is no longer a member of USC's now number 2 ranked recruiting class. Oh no, USC, they suck again. Yeah, USC fell all the way from number 1 down to number 2. How will they survive? I'll say this. And look, I want to make sure this is very clear. It's nothing personal about Xavier Griffin or his family. It has nothing to do with them per se. However, I think USC needs to stay away from those early commitments, especially from elite players who are from out of state. Do not take their commitments until they're done taking all their visits, until they're over. Usually, official visits are done by the end of June. USC can wait that long. Look, I'm not saying avoid recruits from the state of Georgia. For the last 2 years, you're thinking, well, maybe USC should avoid those guys. And look, for every one Cameron Fountain who stays the course, there's going to be 4 to 5 others who probably just, they're going to want to enjoy the process and then eventually stay closer to home. Let me give you Xavier Griffin's version of what went down, why he decommitted from USC. And he's been committed since last summer. Quote, "My commitment has been a question for a few months now, but the hard decision has come within the last 2 weeks. I wanted to still be able to enjoy my process and go on my official visits, but respectful of USC at the same time. So this happened after a lot of talking with my mom and praying. I work hard every day on and off the field. So I want to enjoy this process while I can and make sure I explore all of my options. We only get one shot. And if it wasn't fair to USC to continue to do that while being committed to them, I definitely want to be able to shut it down and be committed before the season starts and focus on my senior year." End quote. Look, I appreciate Xavier coming out saying, quote, it wasn't fair to USC as part of his mea culpa. But did you notice that he also said he wants to enjoy the process twice? Let me translate that for everybody. In other words, he's saying he enjoys the process of being fawned over, recruited, hearing all the offers coming his way. When you're an elite player and everybody wants you, it's a pretty cool feeling. I get that. And when you got schools like Alabama and Texas knocking on your front door consistently, saying, hey, that offer wasn't good enough. How about this offer? All of a sudden you say, you know what? Let's entertain some more opportunities. Again, got no problem with that. Nothing wrong with that. But this is why USC took control of the situation. Look, if Griffin's commitment was a question for the last few months, according to him, then I'll say he faked it pretty well each time he came out to USC. He's been out to USC multiple times since he committed last summer. A few times this year alone. USC doesn't need to have Xavier, or anyone for that matter, that wants to play the recruiting game. Show up with an offer sheet later down the line and say, hey, match it. USC doesn't have it. USC is not taking that approach this year. They think they're being very liberal with their NIL offers, up front with, hey, look, if you want to take your visits, great. Before you commit to USC, get that out of the way. Don't commit and then come back a couple months later and say, hey, you know what? I want to take some visits. That dog doesn't hunt this year. Once Chad Bowden took over the general manager role at USC, a new recruiting strategy was implemented. USC decided that its commits were going to be fully committed, right? No visits anywhere else after they make that announcement. There's no second guessing. For instance, Brandon Lockhart, friend of the show, who I've interviewed here, he just posted, after Xavier's announcement came down, he posted a message over there on X, formerly known as Twitter. He said, my parents are committed to one another, and I don't think they like or allow the other to go on dates to check things out elsewhere. Yeah, it's not it's not an apples to apples comparison, but you understand the point he's making. They made a commitment to each other. Doesn't matter how long they've been together. Once you've done that, you don't get to second guess and say, well, let me just make sure. Let me go on a date. I love you. However, just to be sure, that's not how it works. It's pretty straightforward. Being in a committed relationship, it requires discipline, period. Speaking of discipline, why do we put so much emphasis on that, that value of discipline on the field, off the field, making good choices, yada, 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 all the things we hear about when it comes to, college football programs, players, having position rooms, being more disciplined, that type of stuff. So why do we put so much emphasis on that? But we're not going to hold people accountable and be disciplined during the recruiting process. That's not and that's not an attack on someone's character. But does that only apply once they're signed? I have zero doubt that Xavier wanted to stay committed to USC as well as take his visits. That would be his perfect world. However, I also know that USC is staying true to its word. They're remaining disciplined. They're trying to build that culture. So if you watch the show, I hate hypocrites. Trust me. I really do understand the sentiment about, well, this recruiting strategy is dumb. We'll lose more guys over trying to make a point that we don't need to make. That's one argument that's come up. And yes, Pete Carroll let guys take visits after they were committed. But can we admit that Pete was recruiting when there wasn't a transfer portal or NIL that had contract negotiations with guys like, I don't know, who's Jackson Cantwell's, Drew Rosenhaus? I mean, we've got guys in high school with NFL agents. And now we're talking the big dudes, the Drew Rosenhauses of the world. So, yeah, Pete was doing this during a different time. Back then, players had to sit out a year if they wanted to transfer. So it's not an apples to apples comparison. I want to be very clear. Xavier is a great talent. But USC, they got to stick to their guns. There was always going to be a chance he was going to flip anyways. But look, if I'm a USC fan, and I am, I would probably look forward to USC's next commitment. I don't think it's going to take too long. USC, they don't want to live or kind of have their fan base feeling any negativity, any bad vibes. So I would anticipate something good happening sooner rather than later. And I also think it's more clear now why USC made that offer to Taylor Johnson just last week. You know, the linebacker from Cajon High School. Don't misunderstand me. Taylor is a hell of a prospect, and he should have been offered regardless. However, it does make me wonder, does USC extend the offer if Xavier Griffin was still committed? I think he's worthy of an offer, but it does make me wonder. So, looks like your linebacker class right now, you're going to have Sean Scott, you're going to have Taylor Johnson, Gimme Talanoa Ely. Let's call it a day. Are you good with those three linebackers? I know you would have been happier with Sean Scott and Talanoa and Xavier Griffin. But after everybody's watching Taylor Johnson's film, they're going, whoa, dude, that dude's a player. And if you look at the measurables, as far as height, weight, he and Xavier aren't that different. And he's local. So, yeah, I think that's going to be your linebacker room for the 2026 recruiting cycle. So there it is. Bad news, or just it is news. Just kind of speed bump, roll with it. USC's recruiting class isn't ruined, not even close. Again, they still have the number 2 ranked class in the country. It's not like they took some precipitous fall.
The NBA playoffs roll on, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action right now. When you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. I love how FanDuel makes it easy to bet, whether it's picking your favorite team or diving into player props, from three-pointers to steals to assists. There's just so many ways to bet your favorite props. Plus, after the game tips off, you can even combine live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to win big. You can place your first $5 bet on today's lone NBA game. The Nuggets, a game away from elimination, are 4.5-point home dogs to the Thunder. Don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today.
Did the Longhorns just land the next Travis Hunter?
You are Locked On Longhorns, your daily podcast on the Texas Longhorns. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
The Longhorns landed a commitment from 5-star athlete Jermaine Bishop Jr. He plays his high school football at Willis High here in the state of Texas, and he chose the Longhorns over Texas A&M, Oklahoma, USC, Florida, and more than 20 other offers from around the country. What makes Jermaine Bishop Jr. so special? He plays both ways. Some recruiting sites have him listed as a cornerback. Others have him listed as an athlete. And on his high school team, he plays both wide receiver and cornerback, and he is damn good at both. How about these numbers? 2 years ago, as a sophomore on varsity, Bishop had 1,414 receiving yards and 17 touchdowns. He was playing with former 5-star and current Florida quarterback DJ Lagway that year. And people wondered, okay, well, without your 5-star quarterback, what are the numbers going to look like? How about 1,565 yards and 18 receiving touchdowns this past season for Bishop? Yeah, not too shabby. This is pretty cool, too. He is 796 receiving yards away from being the all-time receiving yards leader in Greater Houston high school football. And he's roughly 1,500 receiving yards away from being top 10 in Texas high school football history. So if he puts together another season, just like his last two, then not only is he going to go down in the school record books and the district record books, he's going to go down as one of the most productive players in Texas high school football history. And just think about how many awesome players have come through this state. Yeah, Jermaine Bishop Jr. making a name for himself, and he'll have one more season to continue to do that. So those are the offensive numbers right there. Not too shabby. About 3 interceptions, 6 PBUs, and 2 forced fumbles in 2024. He also has had 4 non-offensive touchdowns in the last 2 seasons. So not only is this guy getting into the end zone on offense, he's finding ways to score on defense as well. He's taking the ball away. He is the consummate playmaker who just makes stuff happen, and he has been a huge part of Willis High School's success these last 2 seasons. 5'11", only 155 pounds. Mike Roach of 24/7 Sports called him the best two-way player in this class. There were a lot of schools out there that were only recruiting Bishop as a one-way player, but it sounds like Texas, and we'll see what happens when Bishop gets on the 40 acres, but it sounds like the Longhorns are at least open to the idea of him playing both ways. If you're not already excited, how about this profile from Gabe Brooks, also of 24/7 Sports? Quote, one of the best pure football players in the country, reflected by absurd production on both sides of the ball across multiple Texas 6A varsity seasons. Dynamic 3-phase playmaker who lacks ideal measurables and frame specs, but possesses wiry tendon strength shown in ball skills, run after catch strength, and surprising striking power for such a lean cover man. Ball skills magician, immense production at receiver, nearly 3,000 yards and 35 touchdowns in his sophomore and junior seasons. Also recorded 8 interceptions and scored 4 non-offensive TDs in that span. If you're not already excited, here's more. Legitimate candidate to play two-way snaps at the Power 4 level. High school profile similar to players such as Kamari Lassiter, Ladd McConkey, Jordan Addison, perhaps even Travis Hunter in recent years. Projects as a high major impact player who could become an early round draft candidate. End quote. Now, that'll work. I don't know if Jermaine Bishop is going to beat Travis Hunter. We are talking about a guy who just won the Heisman and a guy who was just picked 2nd overall in this year's NFL draft. But if Jermaine Bishop is like 70 to 80% of Travis Hunter, then Texas has itself a star. He's going to be so much fun to watch. He's going to be so much fun to root for. And look, even if he doesn't turn into Travis Hunter to where he's a two-way sensation, like Kamari Lassiter, great college player, just had a great first year with the Houston Texans. Ladd McConkey, great college player, just had a great first year with the LA Chargers. Jordan Addison has become one of the best young receivers in the NFL. Those are guys that you want to be compared to. And if you're a fan, those are guys you want the players your school brings in to be compared to. High major impact player who could become an early round draft candidate. And I think it's important to note that, yeah, this is not only Texas high school football, but this is 6A Texas high school football that Jermaine Bishop Jr. has been putting up those numbers in, going up against the best of the best, and he has made it happen for 2 years in a row, and I think there's a damn good chance it'll be 3 seasons in a row. Bishop wants to play both ways. He did say if he had to pick one side of the ball, it would be defense. Again, not entirely sure how Texas views him. I think if he is a one-side player, it will likely be at corner. But man, it's going to be fun to watch. He's going to be fun to root for. And again, if this guy is anything close to what Travis Hunter was at Colorado these last couple of years, and then at Jackson State before that, then the Longhorns have themselves maybe the most fun player in this entire recruiting class of 2026. I cannot wait to see what Jermaine Bishop does when he gets to Austin. That is a huge, huge pickup for Texas. We got a couple of video clips. We don't always do this here on Locked On Longhorns, but to get you even more pumped up about Texas's newest addition, we've got a couple of random clips. This one is from a camp. You see Jermaine Bishop Jr. running a route as a receiver, and I'll play it one more time. I'm not sure y'all caught that here. In the middle of his cut, his shoe falls off. He doesn't lose a step. He's running with one shoe on and one shoe off, and he still blows by the guy covering him and catches this pass in stride and waltzes into the end zone for an easy score. So that's a camp clip. How about a game clip from last season? There's Jermaine Bishop right there, just catches the screen, hurdle, and then boom, turns on the jets. Going from jumping over a dude to that speed and that short of an amount of time. Very, very impressive. We'll show this clip one more time for you so you can enjoy it. Look at that. Just jumps over a dude and then turns on the afterburners. An easy touchdown along the right sideline. If you're watching on YouTube, you know what I'm talking about. Hopefully I explained that well enough for those of you tuned in podcast form. But a freak athlete, stud production against the best competition in the country. And yeah, a guy who was ranked as a 5-star from our friends at 24/7 Sports. That was today's commit. Texas also picked up a 4-star cornerback commit last Friday. Cornerback Hayward Howard Jr. from New Orleans gave his verbal to the Longhorns late last week. And this is huge, man. Texas going in to the state of Louisiana and taking a kid who had an offer from LSU. That's not easy to do. We know how well Louisiana is able to recruit its homegrown talent. I should say Louisiana State is able to recruit the homegrown talent in the state of Louisiana. They do a tremendous job of keeping the guys they want at home. Texas has had a little bit of success in recent years. Obviously, Arch Manning. Think about Derek Williams Jr. You think about Wardell Mack, guys like Malcolm Roach and Barron Sorrell, who are, of course, now in the NFL. Texas has done a pretty good job going east to the Bayou State and taking players away from the Bayou Bengals. Anytime that happens, that is massive. And for the Horns to do this, despite losing Terry Joseph to the New Orleans Saints, Terry Joseph, obviously a Louisiana guy, had connections to that state, was worried about how the Longhorns were going to be able to fare in Louisiana after he departed. Well, so far, so good. Hayward Howard Jr., 6'2", 175 from the New Orleans area. He's the 33rd ranked corner in the class of 2026. Texas was one of the 4 finalists, LSU, Miami, and Florida State. The others, he had offers from a bunch of different schools across the country. Another big get. So a great 5 or 6 days for Steve Sarkisian and company on the recruiting trail. Texas now has 7 players committed for the class of 2026. That number is going to increase here in the summertime. The Longhorns class currently ranks 30th in the nation, according to the composite rankings. I'm here to tell you it won't be ranked number 30 by the time we get to signing day. This is only the beginning, but 2 huge pieces in the last week for Texas football. And again, you get Travis Hunter comparisons. That's going to get me excited. I cannot wait. I'm going to be paying close attention to what Jermaine Bishop Jr. does in his senior year of high school ball. And pumped to see what he brings to the table when he becomes a Texas Longhorn. All right, comment below with your thoughts on these 2 pickups. Steve Sarkisian and this Texas coaching staff continuing to get it done on the recruiting trail.
There's nothing like the energy of a live game. Whether it's catching a last-minute Major League Baseball showdown or soaking up the excitement of an NBA matchup, finding great seats at a great price, though, that used to be a challenge until I found Gametime. With last-minute deals, all-in pricing, and the lowest price guarantee, Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. Plus, ticket prices actually drop as the beginning of the game gets closer, so you can score amazing seats at a great price. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime.
Notre Dame continues its month-and-a-half-long hot streak on the recruiting trail.
You are Locked On Irish, your daily podcast on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish.
Let's talk about what Notre Dame is getting in 4-star running back Jonaz Walton. Walton's commitment, along with the commitment of 4-star running back Javian Osborne, solidifies Notre Dame's backfield for the class of 2026, and it could end up being the best running back tandem in the country this cycle. He's 5'9" in all of 205 pounds. Not the tallest guy in terms of height, but man, he is stout, and he is ranked number 124 nationally, and he's the number 10 running back in the 24/7 Sports composite. Osborne is ranked slightly higher than Walton. Osborne is number 91 in the country and the number 6 running back, but landing 1 running back ranked in the top 10 in a class is a big accomplishment, let alone two who actually complement each other pretty well. And Walton became a priority for Notre Dame back in December of 2023 when Deland McCullough first offered him. And Deland McCullough deserves a lot of credit in this recruitment. Obviously, Ja'Juan Seider is the guy who got it done, but it was McCullough who recruited Walton early on in the process, and he generated a lot of that initial interest. And Walton was on campus for junior day in January and then made his way back to South Bend for an unofficial visit in early April. And let's be honest, once McCullough decided to leave Notre Dame for the NFL, I think Walton kind of wavered on Notre Dame there for a little bit. But then once Ja'Juan Seider became a part of the staff, it was a seamless transition. He started recruiting Walton extremely hard, made him a priority, and that is a big reason why Notre Dame was able to land him. But I also think that visit in early April was crucial for this commitment because it was the first time Walton was able to visit Notre Dame with Seider on the staff. And Notre Dame was actually able to close the deal a little bit earlier than Walton originally planned. He had planned on committing in July, but he pulled the trigger on May 14th. And yeah, he said it was because of Notre Dame's tradition and family atmosphere. But in reality, I think he knew he had to commit to Notre Dame sooner than later to keep his spot because Notre Dame they already have Javion Osborne, and they're also recruiting Brian Bonner, who's a very talented prospect out of California, and also Devin Walker. And Walton ultimately chose Notre Dame over some big-time heavyweights in college football like Alabama, Georgia, and Tennessee. Stanford was a finalist as well, not necessarily a heavyweight in modern college football. And whenever you see Stanford in the finalist of any top prospect, I like Notre Dame's chances there because clearly that individual prioritizes academics, and there is no better school in the country where you can marry academics and football like Notre Dame. So this was not an easy commitment for Notre Dame to get, but they were able to land him, and a big part of that has to do with Ja'Juan Seider's closing ability. He came to Notre Dame as a very well-respected recruiter, what he had done for the Nittany Lions in his 7 years at the program, and he just kept it going as soon as he got on campus at Notre Dame. And Walton spoke with Christian McCullum of Irish Sports Daily, and he had a very interesting quote about Ja'Juan Seider's pitch. Quote, "One thing that sold us was the success that Katron Allen and Nick Singleton both had at Penn State. They were both freshmen. They came in and they made impacts right away. I feel that could potentially be something that could happen between me and Javion, so I've been sold on it," end quote. So, first of all, great work, Christian, getting that quote, because I think that's really interesting. It's kind of like when Mike Denbrock came over to Notre Dame from LSU, and he was showing quarterback recruits like Deuce tonight, video of Jaden Daniels, and I always thought that, like, I understand why he's doing it, but it always felt a little bit weird showing Notre Dame recruits videos of a different college. But hey, it worked out in the case of Javion Osborne and Jonaz Walton as well, because these are two very talented running backs. They could have chosen to go to another school where they were probably the feature back in the class. All the hype was around them, but they decided to join forces, and they looked at what Seider did, rotating Singleton and Allen at Penn State, and that's a big reason why Notre Dame was ultimately able to land both of these prospects. For Walton, I think he's got a very powerful lower body, great leg drive, and he has a very physical running style. And his physicality extends beyond just running. He's pretty solid at blitz pickups, and he is not afraid to block downfield. It's kind of funny watching some of his high school tape where he's out in the open. He doesn't even have the ball, but he's looking to light someone up. I think he's got a mean streak in him in really all phases of the game. You don't always see that from a player of his caliber. Like if a top guy doesn't have the ball and his teammates running down the field, he might not be inclined to go out there and try to block someone because it's like, look, I'm probably going to get the ball the next play and score anyway. But that is not the case with Jonaz Walton. He's also been insanely productive throughout his career in high school football. He's already racked up 4,445 all-purpose yards in high school because he's also the punt and kick returner. He also has 3,070 rushing yards and 918 receiving yards. He has one more year left, and he's playing football in Georgia. So you know he's playing against good competition. His offense primarily runs out of the pistol, and he's very effective in screen passes in short yardage situations. They even split him out into the slot so he can just catch a screen pass, and then he's already in the open field going up against much just smaller defensive backs who, those poor kids, man, they're in high school. They're not nearly as big as Jonaz Walton. They're tasked to tackle him in the open field. Not a whole lot of fun for that kid, but I was once that kid a long time ago. Personally, my only concern about Walton is that he tends to bounce the ball outside a little bit when he doesn't have to. Kind of reminds you of Jadarian Price. That works in high school. I don't think he's quick enough to do that in college consistently, but he does have track speed. So once he gets the ball outside, he can take it the distance. He actually just finished second in the 100-meter dash with a time of 10.66 at the Georgia 4A Track and Field State Championships recently. And even though Osborne and Walton aren't your typical thunder and lightning combination, they do complement each other pretty well. Osborne is very much a north and south runner, and then you have Walton, who's a little bit more powerful than Osborne, but also can break it to the outside. So the question remains, is Notre Dame going to recruit 3 running backs in this class? They might keep the door open for a 3rd running back. It's just a question of who is willing to walk in the door. I love Brian Bonner as a prospect. I've talked about it before on the show. He's got elite breakaway speed, and he's probably the closest thing to Jeremiah Love in this class. He would be like the true lightning prospect that would be a perfect complement to either one of these backs. But is Brian Bonner going to join a class that has 2 running backs already? I just find that hard to believe. Brian Smith, our Locked On Recruiting Insider, comes on the show all the time. We do crossover episodes. He mentioned that Bonner could potentially play wide receiver in college just given his skill set. So if he's open to that, maybe Notre Dame can land him. And if Seven Walker really wants to come to Notre Dame, I'm sure they would take him. I just don't think either one of these guys will because they're very talented. They could go to a school and have just better opportunities right away because they're not going to have to share the wealth among 2 other running backs. And on one hand, it's easy to say that's too many running backs to add 3 in one class. But I also thought 1 or 2 guys would leave the current Notre Dame running back room, the transfer portal this offseason, and that didn't happen. So I'm not ruling anything out at this point. I would find it highly unlikely that they end up taking 3 running backs in this class, but considering they're just stacking that running back room more and more with very talented players, I don't even know what to expect anymore. I guess if you just have 10 running backs in the room, we're all extremely talented. That probably bodes well for the rest of the roster, but I think Notre Dame is going to be just fine with Jonaz Walton and Xavier Osborne. All right, Walton's commitment is a major win for the Irish, but the work is not done yet.